Hey, 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 it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. In today's episode, I interview Katie Raffetto of the San Francisco Bay Area. She is a delightful designer who has been in business for over 15 years. Wow, right? Today's conversation is about all things business, but especially we talk about the money. We talk specifically actually about billing for the biggest part of this conversation. And Katie shares her experience and her transformation in how she bills her clients for her time. I think it's a really good episode. I think, there's one point in the episode where Katie shares a story about a client and a situation she was in, and it literally brought out of the, what do you call it when something's buried so deep in your memory? Out of my memory, it brought out this past project I'd completely forgotten about and how I handled the billing situation, which I would not recommend, but I do share that in this podcast. I love these episodes because I get to talk with such incredible people, especially women who are truly resilient, constantly learning as they grow. And I love it when designers like Katie are willing to share their expertise and give back to the community. So here you have it, my episode with Katie Raffetto. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. There is literally nothing better than staying in my abode all-day PJs, all day. These beauty, buttery, soft pajamas come in 3 fabulous colors, and trust me, you will never want to take them off. Check them out at lovemyabode.com and type in Resilient10 to get $10 off your very first order. Welcome to the podcast, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I'm excited to have you here. Another fabulous Californian, if that's what you say. I don't even know.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sure. Why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. I'm Katie Raffetto. I'm an interior designer based out of the Bay Area. Our office is currently in Mill Valley, California. And we have been in business for 15 years and have a small team and mostly work in residential interiors.
What is small team for you?
There are 5 of us. And then we have a CAD person who does contract work for us.
Awesome. It's all relative, right? Someone listening might be like, 5 people. That's awesome. 15 years. That's a good chunk of time.
Yes.
Yeah, to really nail down your business. I'm excited to dive in and chat more about that.
Great.
So why don't we just dive right in? 15 years is that's longer than I've had my business. So I would love to know, what would you say is the biggest learning that you've had in your design business in those 15 years?
Sure. And I would say in the 15 years, our business, in the beginning, I was part-time on my own and part-time working for another designer. So I feel fortunate that I had a kind of soft launch onto my own, which was nice. And I would say one thing that I have found is very critical to our business is billing and getting paid so we can keep running our business. And we've made some changes over the year that I think have made that process better for us and for our clients.
Okay, well, let's dive right into that, because I love that was what you talked about, because most designers would be like, well, I really honed in on my aesthetic, or you're like, I'm going to talk about serious stuff, billing. But that is I'm sure as a designer yourself, that is one of the things that we as creatives often really struggle with, right? Is
definitely
how to bill for our services, how much to bill for our services, when and if we should bill for our services, right? Because we tend to I think most of us tend to take our skill set for granted because it comes so naturally to us.
Yes. And I think we're generally people pleasers, and we want our clients to be happy, and we don't want them to be frustrated with the process. And so I've heard you talk about this on your podcast in the past, and you feel bad about how something went, so you cut your bill down. And I mean, in my experience, I have found that doesn't really serve us as a business. And if I'm honest about how much things cost and how long they take, most clients typically respect that. And you just have to put it out there.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, that's something that, excuse me, from your experience now, that. But when you're starting out,
yeah, it's scary.
There's this this idea, totally scary, but there's this, what you said, this idea that if we sacrifice making money, it will offset the discomfort of our client in whatever shape or form. It's so ludicrous when you think about it.
I know, it is crazy.
It's if I suffer a little financially, then that helps to make up for it. But it never really makes up for it anyways. You may as well pay yourself well.
Yes, definitely. And we work so hard, and it's so great when you see how happy your client is. And I have found that when your client is happy and they love the work you've done and you can stand behind your bill, then they'll pay it. And I think clients that haven't, those aren't people I want to work with going forward.
Totally. And I think sometimes that just takes that experience to have worked with both types of clients.
Correct.
So tell me, okay, so you said you've had this kind of transformation. When you started your business 15 years ago or so, how were you billing? What did that look like?
So we were billing line by line. So our bill kind of read source, living room, furniture, and there was a number of hours you spent and then how much it costs. And so we line itemed everything on a bill. And we got to a point, we did that for a while because I felt like clients want to know how long you're spending on these individual tasks, is why I wanted to bill that way. And then it got to this point, things always kind of come in waves, and we had 2 clients that were pushing back on bills at the same time. And it was the end of the project. So usually the bills are pretty high at the end because you're at their house for a long time, days. And then all of a sudden they get this huge bill at the end. And something we try to do to educate our clients is to stay timely bill throughout the process. So they started get to understand how much things cost, how much time things take. So by the time they get to the end, they've had this experience. It's not a surprise. And we had 2 clients that pushed back at the end. And Lori, who works with me, she is kind of our director of operations and does most of the billing. I remember she was starting to get nervous because this one client was holding on a bill right before the install. And so then they had 2 months that they weren't going to pay. And they felt as though everything had taken too long. And
right, which I'm sure is your fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course it's your fault.
So they're like, we think that this bill is high and has taken too long, but they kept saying we're really pleased with the house and we're so happy with everything. And I told them that, in our billing process, we have a number of ways that we flush out any inefficiencies. Lori puts the bill together first, then I review it, and we talk about anything that we think, did that take a long time and was a learning experience for us? So maybe we should take some time off of the bill. But not just, wow, that seems like a lot of time. We stand behind how long things take because in our process, things do take a long time. Some things go quickly, some things don't.
Yeah.
And so I let the client know that we have processes in place where we flush out any inefficiencies. So although it does seem like these things have taken a while, that is how long things took. So that's what the bill is. And they asked if we could have a call where we go through line by line on.
Oh my gosh. That's like every designer's nightmare.
It is. And I was about to do it. And thank God Lori said, don't do that. I mean, what good is going to come of that?
Right.
For you? Nothing. I think, and if we say, I remember this client said, how did it take 8 hours to update a spreadsheet? And I was like, well, it's not like we sat down for 8 hours straight and just update a spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet is kind of so critical to your project and making sure that it's always updated. We know where everything is. So over a month, we could easily put together 8 hours.
Easily.
On that, right. And so I just knew, Lori and I talked, and I knew if we went line by line and I said, oh, you're right, maybe that is a little bit less, it devalues the whole bill.
Yes.
So if I let anything go.
So glad you said that. Hold up there for 1 second, because I used to do that. I used to discount my hours, but as soon as you do that, first of all, I would discount them before I'd even send it out. Like you said, we'd flush it out to find inefficiencies, but it was like, oh, I can't charge them 5 hours sourcing fabric. Let's just charge them 3. Right. So I'm already losing money. And then if they fought the bill similarly, well, not similarly, because I did the discounting, I would say, well, we won't charge you for this or something like that. But you're right. It devalues all the work you've put in by discounting something.
Right. And I mean, this wasn't on this experience, but I have found if you ever give a client a discount on something, you have to let them know.
Yes.
Because then if you give a discount and you don't let them know, then they think that's how much that costs.
I know. That was my mistake for so many years.
I know. I did it too.
Because then in your head, you become resentful because
right.
You've already given them a special deal and better pricing because you know that they're on a tight budget or whatever it is. Right. And they don't value that because they don't know you've even done that in the first place.
Right. But if you tell them that, then they say, oh, they understand and they're appreciative. Yeah. And they see how you are really, understand them and want to make sure that they're getting the best result. Yeah. And so that's why you've chosen to make this discount.
So what did you do with this client?
With this one client. So I said, I'm not going through it item by item. Your house is installed. You love your house. I'm so happy you love your house. Just tell me what you're going to pay and let's move on.
Good for you. Whoa. That's like no BS. I love it.
And one thing that we always say is you never want a client, in every project, there's ups and downs in every project. And you never want a client to have anything bad to say about you.
Yeah, of course. That's our greatest fear, especially because we all serve local audiences, right? Yes. Yeah, you don't want a bad rap.
And so we thought, okay, so what could this client say? They can't say, they're going to say to their friends, oh, she was great. She kind of took a while. And then I didn't pay her whole bill.
Yeah.
Like, they're probably not going to say that because
they might say she was expensive, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. So, and I think I gave them a deal because I didn't want to spend any more time or energy. And I wanted to move on and start working in a positive way again. Mm-hmm. As soon as possible. And we got what we got and moved on.
So they did not pay the full bill then?
No, they did not.
Man, oh man.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but they know they got a deal because it was clear. And I don't know if they feel good about that in the end.
Yeah.
And I hope that if they go on to use other designers, they have a better understanding of the process. And not get in too deep where they don't feel like they want to pay the whole bill anymore.
It's so now hearing your story, it's reminding me that I had a similar situation actually. It's amazing how we bury these situations in our memory. Like, I did a basement design. I don't think they're listening. I did a basement design a few years ago for a family friend. First mistake, right?
Yeah.
And I was invoicing them. I think it was hourly. I'm pretty sure it must have been hourly because at the end, when I gave him the last invoice and the project didn't go the way I wanted, like this person had their own ideas. He kind of went rogue. Like I just wanted to get paid and moved on. Like I didn't photograph it.
Right.
It was just like helping them out. Right. And they think they're doing me a favor. This is why you have to be careful sometimes, right? Because they're seeing me as like the little girl or my mom's daughter who's like just getting started. Meanwhile, I have clients already paying me, good money to do my job. And he said to me at the end, he was like, oh, well, no, I didn't expect it to be this much money. I think, what did he say? He was something along the lines of, no, I think the design fee should be this.
Man.
And I don't remember the number anymore, but it was considerably less money. It was something like I needed 7,500 and he thought it should be like 3,000 max or something. And I was just like, it was just my time. I didn't have an assistant at the time. I was like, I just need to move on.
Right.
And I was like, fine, if that's what I think I had my husband help me with the wording of the email.
Right.
Because I was like, what do I say to this guy without burning bridges? I'm not going to fight him.
And you're going to see him again in your life.
Yes, exactly. And so I just changed the invoice to reflect what he wanted to pay, and he paid it, and we moved on.
Right.
So funny. I'd actually completely forgotten that until you told me that story.
Yes. Because it's just negative energy, and you just need to move on. Totally. It's not my advice to everyone, like, just cut it down and move on. But in certain cases, it's not worth your time and energy when you have other people that are paying your bills and really value you.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, though, the line by line, like hearing you talk about, because I used to bill like that too, where line by line, I would bill the hours, but everything was line by line, like everything was itemized. And I would spend, and it sounds like in what you said you and Lori would do, it sounds to me like a similar experience of what I did, which was spend so much time going over invoices.
Oh, I know. It is
unbillable hours. Reviewing and stressing and reviewing. And let's look at it again. Well, what if we do it? What if we format it this way? What if we group the tasks that way? What if we just change oh my gosh.
I know.
The description of the task to give more value to it. Yeah. Hours were spent.
Right. I do feel like that is something we are still struggling with and constantly trying to finesse is the time it takes to put the bills together.
Yeah.
It is such a bear. I mean, it takes forever.
Okay. So let's move on from what you used to do.
Right. And
so how has that transitioned? Like, I'm sure you've had a few iterations. Sorry, go ahead.
No, right after that client, we made the choice and said, we need to bill in paragraph form. And so that's how our bills are now. We've done that since then. This was, I can't remember, but it was years ago, maybe 7 years ago.
What does that mean, paragraph form?
Now our bills are monthly, and we have 2 buckets: my time, interior design services, and then design assistant, which is almost everybody else. And they're 2 rates. And so my time is broken out, or it just reads as a paragraph. We try to get it to tell a story of the month. So we take all the inputs that we have in QuickBooks, put them together, and make sure that it follows a flow of a project for the month. So select items for living room, pull fabrics, put together the presentation. Not all of this doesn't always happen in a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that.
Right. And sometimes it says track pending orders 12 times in the month, but we would take that out and say it tracks pending orders. So that,
right. Yeah.
And sometimes we'll repeat it a couple times so that they see it as an ongoing thing that we are doing. So it tells a story and then it just has a total for the month.
Yeah.
For each bucket. My time, interior design services has that as well. And then any reimbursables. So our CAD person is just, CAD drawings and there's a total in there.
Okay.
And that's how it reads. And we, knock on wood, have not had any pushback since then.
Amazing.
Because I think when it's broken out, people are able to pick it apart easier.
It's almost like an invitation, right? It's like an invitation to like, if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, here's how I spend every 15 minutes of our time.
Right. And I think sometimes people get a bill and they're like, oh gosh, that's a lot. And then they look at the paragraph and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, we did a lot.
Right. Like, what am I going to do? Call her and ask her to go into more detail?
Right. But if they can see review spreadsheet for 8 hours, they're like, whoa, that seems crazy. I'm going to call her about that.
It's so true because I've been the client on the other end, like with my accountant from time to time.
Right.
Because I get detailed invoicing. And I remember it was like, I don't know, last year, we got an invoice and I was like, oh man, that's a lot of money. Like, what? So I started going through the detail and I noticed I was like 2 hours of correspondence with my like administrator at the time. And I obsessed over the little things and I'm like, 2 hours of email correspondence. Right. I'm like, how did that happen? And then I was like, instead of just I love that paragraph form like that. I think that's a huge takeaway for anyone listening who is billing hourly and struggles with the line items.
That was a huge change for us.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm the same. I get bills from people and I'm always like, that was more than I thought. But if you just, and then you see how much work goes in and it's a big paragraph and it's got a lot of description in there, you're like, oh yeah, I love that room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me pay it.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So this is really great. How do you take a retainer?
Yes, we do.
So
and that was a change. We have not always done that.
Right. Did you ever have anyone who walked away and didn't pay your bill?
Yes. And yes. And we did have a retainer with that person and he didn't want to pay the bill. And so we said, and he asked for the retainer back. And I said, no.
That is ballsy.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And I said I would apply the retainer to the bill. And then we sent him, and the bill was higher than the retainer.
Yeah.
And he said he wasn't going to pay it and wanted all the design materials sent to him. And we were like, we would be happy to if you pay your bill.
Yeah, that's good. That's your leverage.
Right.
Yeah.
And he never did. So we never sent him.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of designers listening who still are not collecting any money up front. And I think that would be like the biggest learning that I had, because I did have someone who once left and like didn't pay the last bill and I had presented everything. And he ghosted us for a year. And then a year later reached out for something completely else. And it was still sitting on it. Like we had this unpaid invoice, which we hadn't written off yet. And it wasn't a lot of money. It was like $2,800 for time. It was more the principle of it,
Yes. It's frustrating.
And my admin emailed him and said, oh, we've noticed, I think I got a new admin. She's like, oh, I'm just cleaning up some accounts from last year. And we noticed that we have this outstanding invoice. And he's like, oh no, that was settled with Rebecca. No, definitely not. So he went on to say, because he's in the industry, like he was a builder, I don't even remember, but it was for his own home. He was like, oh, I just assumed I was getting a better discount because I'm in the industry. Like, no. And so
did we discuss that?
No, exactly. So I wrote it off.
Yeah. And I do think the retainer, that's something that Lori and I chatted about. She brought it up and I think it was a great change because I think it kind of marked the shift for me in my company, where in the beginning I'm still very thankful for every client that I have now, but there was I was just starting out. And so new clients, I was like, oh gosh, this is amazing. I hope it is a great experience for them. And I felt uncomfortable coming to them right away when I didn't have a ton of experience saying, you have to give me this retainer up front. Where now I have the confidence because of my experience to say this, to ask for a retainer. And if it scares people off, it's fine. It's for the best. It's kind of, it weeds people out in a way that they understand this is a luxury service. It's going to cost a lot of money. This isn't a place that you come to get a deal.
Yeah.
And so if you're on board with that and can write us this check up front, then let's proceed.
I think you're right, though. It's being comfortable with that as the designer. And when you are starting out, it's true. You really want the experience. And you who are you to say, right? Like, yes, oh no, totally. Like I'm not going to work with you. And really secretly inside, you're just desperate to do any job and get experience. And you need money. Let's face it. We all need to make a living, right?
Right.
Unless it's a hobby and it's just you're a kept woman and you get to do it for fun.
Yeah.
Most of us are not that. At least people listening to this podcast are likely not that.
Right.
It's a business and we have to make money to sustain our own lifestyles and to keep our company going and growing.
Yes.
Yeah. So you collect the retainer, and how do you calculate how much of a retainer you take up front?
Well, we just do $2,000 always.
You only do $2,000?
I know. We need to increase it. We do.
Katie!
I know.
Oh my God.
I was embarrassed to say it.
You can't do that.
I know. That's what we started with, and I felt comfortable with it. And then we just haven't changed it. But I do feel, because then it doesn't cover the bill at the end.
Of course not.
No, it never does. So my advice to people listening is to do more than $2,000.
Yes. Actually, a good rule of thumb that I heard was to calculate what your design fees would be for a month, like a given month.
Okay.
And that's a good rule of thumb. And that's the retainer that you collect. And you don't draw against it.
Okay.
Maybe that's what you do already.
No, yeah, we don't.
You hold on to that and you use it at the very end.
Yes, that's what we do as well.
Because I also
but it should
think
be more.
That the amount of retainer that you ask for up front gives your clients an idea of costing and what to expect in your invoicing.
Right. What your monthly fee is.
Yeah. So if you only collect $2,000 and then 1 month your bill is like $5,500 or more,
like $10,000. Like what?
Right. That's a huge disconnect.
Right.
Yes. A minimum $5,000.
I'm learning something too.
$7,500, maybe $10,000. I don't know what type of design stuff you're doing, but I'm pretty sure $2,000 is not enough.
No, never. I know. That is we should. And something else we've struggled with now is I find we don't take new clients on very often because projects take a really long time.
Yeah.
And so then, what's the final bill? We don't always have, we have clients that we're working with for years and years and years. So we say we apply it to the final bill for the scope of work we set out to do.
Right. Because otherwise you just have that money forever.
Forever. Yeah. And I think
a good problem to have.
Exactly. But if you've completed that scope of work and they're a client that trusts you and you've created this rapport together and you're going to continue to work together for years to come, you're not risking as much.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So you can give them back the retainer.
The money. Yeah. That's a very different, I think you're right. That's a really good point because it depends on the type of projects you're doing. If you're doing a project that's clearly like, we're building a house. When the house is done, I'm out of your life.
Right.
Or we're renovating your bathroom. But if it's like, we're continually decorating, maybe you need to be on a retainer model.
Right.
That would be nice.
Yes, I know. I know.
Every month they just pay you I don't know what it is, like $3,500, $5,500, $10,000 a month, whatever your service is. But
a friend of mine used a designer that did do a monthly flat fee for the time that they worked together. And then if there was little stuff after the bulk of it was done, it went to hourly.
Right.
And she said as a client, she liked that because she just knew what she was getting. And sometimes she felt like she got some months she got a really good value. And some months she kind of overpaid, but it evened out.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
like,
really
wow.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of industries that have that. My husband is in marketing and he has clients that hire him on retainer and they're doing their website, they're doing ongoing marketing plans. And so they pay him and they pay his company a certain amount every single month.
Right.
As opposed to let me bill you hourly, which could be ebb and flow and all over the map. It's not a bad idea. I've actually thought about it in the past, but I think you need the right kind of client for it, for sure. And then you have to be very conscious of your hours so that you're not constantly going over.
Right. And
it's a really good deal for them.
Yes. And we've talked about that with trying that with one client, let's try this model, see how it works, and then we could roll it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you have projects like that just go on for eons, it's not a bad idea.
Right.
Seriously. Yeah. So
we are always developing our billing process, I would say.
Totally. Mm-hmm. So when you, what was I going to say? So you charge hourly. So you track your time and you bill it, but you do it in lump sums, which I think is really cool. But you do ever do a flat fee?
No. I've thought about it and I really would like to, but I'd say to do a flat fee in my thinking about it as applied to our business, it would take a lot of work before you even get the client to come up with that flat fee.
Right. I mean, it depends. There's lots of different ways people calculate them. For sure. We switched to fixed fees or like flat fees.
Great.
And I talk about it a lot on the podcast and I've talked about it. I probably shared it here before, but for me, I like it. It's not for everyone and it's not for every client. But what I like about it is that I don't spend any time now on invoicing.
Amazing.
Right? Like and I don't like talking about money has never been my favorite thing. So I don't have to deal with the jitters of like sending, this invoice is high, let's send it off.
Right. And like hope for the best.
Exactly. And like hold my breath until we either get paid or the email that says, okay, looks good. Right. You're right. Like, oh, what are they thinking? What are they thinking? Right. So it's been such a time savings. But the flip side is you almost need to be more diligent with tracking your hours. Because you need to see and make sure that the money you're collecting covers your time. And so when I first switched from hourly billing to fixed fee, I was like, yes, this is amazing. I don't have to track my hours anymore. And then my whole team, we all kind of fell out of the habit of tracking our time. It's
so hard to get back into.
And then we've been trying to get back in the last year. And as we've been getting back in and tracking, we've realized that on some projects, we've not been very profitable, if at all. Because the number of hours we put in either equated exactly to, or were more than the time, like what was budgeted for. Mm-hmm. So then doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, something we struggle with is accurate time billing always.
Yeah.
And hard. Getting people to do it in a timely manner.
So how do you guys track your time?
We do it in QuickBooks. And we have toyed around. I think some people on my team have used apps like Harvest or time tracking apps. But in my experience, nothing has been that successful of like, ooh, this is the key. This is making it so much easier. So I think just putting it into QuickBooks. And I don't bill my own time anymore, which has been amazing.
So what do you mean you don't bill your own time?
So
everybody listening is like, yes, tell me how.
Every project manager is in charge of billing my time in addition to theirs that I spend on the project.
Oh, interesting.
And then I also have a office manager and assistant who also, when she's next to me when I'm working at the office, so she asks me, and it's her responsibility to always ask me, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I wrote that email last night and I did that, when no one's watching.
Yeah. And I'm not
Yeah.
tracking it.
Yeah. And so then she puts that in. And Lori's the person that, after all the time is in, she looks at it and puts together the bills. And so we always say, always put Katie's time in, even if you think someone else has captured it, because Lori will see that and take it out.
Right.
It's better to have it double billed and then take half out than nobody billing it.
Right. Yeah. So do you have your project managers, like when they're, say, in a design meeting with you, they're just making a note, okay, I need to track Katie's time for this meeting?
Yes.
Brilliant.
It's great. It's been great.
How long have you been doing that for? That's like you've
a long time. So it's very luxurious for me, I would say.
Because I am not diligently tracking my time, I can tell you, and no one else is. So it's just not getting captured.
Right. And we always say capturing my time is where we can be most profitable.
Yeah.
Because I have the highest rate.
Yeah. Well, especially since you are billing hourly.
Yes.
Yeah. The way I see it is kind of like my time, I put in the least amount of time on an individual project of my team because they're the ones doing all the legwork.
Mm-hmm.
But I should be tracking my time per project so that I can accurately understand our profitability. It's not enough to say, okay, so it's cost me this much in people to run this project because I'm also paying myself.
Right.
So I need to factor that in.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is good.
It's one of those things that doesn't come second nature to a lot of us. And so it's trying to figure out the best way so that we do get compensated for all the work that we put in.
Yes. And I would say, we say all the time, we would say almost never overbuild a client. That is not the risk. So that's why we tell our team they're like, oh, but did someone else already put that time in? We're like, listen, there's so many hours we're not capturing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The overbilling a client is not a risk.
Do you bill for 15-minute increments, half an hour increments?
15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which feels, my husband bills his time as well. He's a lawyer and they bill.
I was going to say, that's like a lawyer.
Yeah. They bill, I think, on the 7-minute.
Yeah.
Geez, I could not. But he struggles with it too. Everybody does. It's hard to just always have that. I got this calendar or this notepad next to my desk that's kind of a week. And then I just kind of make notes on there and then give that to Heather and she puts it in.
Oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that. That's a great idea. Because you can just be like 2 hours, this project, 1 hour, this, whatever. Even if it's not super accurate, it's still probably more than nothing.
Right. And that's the time here at the office and when I'm working at home are the times that I think things don't get captured. When I'm out, the project manager always knows what I'm doing. They're like, oh, Katie's at the design center grabbing fabric, or now she's at that meeting.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So I'm actually curious about these project managers that you talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Are they also designers or no?
Yes. Yes. So we recently did a reorganization of how we staff our projects that I am excited about and I like how it is working, where we thought about our teams. We used to always have one project manager and myself on every project. And then we thought about our team and wanted to really play to their skills and give them more work and where they're good. The things that they're good at. So now we have, each project has a project manager and a design manager. And so the design manager is more involved in the design and presentation, and the project manager is more involved in quotes, invoicing, tracking, all of that management part. Because I have found that people are not always great at both.
100%, 1,000%.
Right.
This has been my struggle over the years as I'm constantly reshuffling and reorganizing our structure within the company because I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to crack the code.
Right. I know. I don't know if this is it, but we're trying it right now and it's going well.
That's really good.
Right. And it's nice because if someone, so I have 2 people on each project besides myself. And if someone's out of town, the other person can always kind of step in and do both. And then one's just more design focused, because I also found when I was giving tasks to people, I would be like, ooh, I don't want to ask her to go pull those fabrics because she's really got to track everything. Like that's critical.
Right.
And I don't have the information to track all that. I'll just select the fabrics. But it has been great, and it allowed me to the time to work on all the projects, because I can say to the design manager, can you go to the design center, grab these fabrics, and then we'll review them at the office.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's similar. It's interesting to hear you say that, because I've, for many years, keep having this like debate about the project manager versus the designer, because they are 2 different skill sets. And I have had strong project managers and I've had strong designers and I've had people who are medium at both. Like I've had it all. My favorite sort of makeup of people, if you will, with skill sets was a few years ago. It was just before the pandemic, actually. And we lost our project manager because she went to stay home with her kids. Was when I had a proper project manager who was trained like in the corporate role with managing projects, but had experience in construction and design. So not a designer, but got an eye for it and was like project manager, like keep the ship steered straight,
right,
keep everyone on track, partnered with a true designer, like super creative, little scatterbrained, all of that, but like, great taste, excellent ability to like, pick everything, put it together, but not really great with like the tracking and keeping the checklists and all of that. And so the 2 of them together did 2 projects. And that was the first, and still today, the only time that I really, once we like signed off on after presentation and revisions and moved into what we call implementation, I did not step foot in that house, either of those houses, until reveal day. Amazing. And on reveal day, I walked in and I moved around a few accessories because it was done. Even to this day, I've not experienced it again like that, because I haven't had the 2 people. Now, the project manager was not placing orders. That was left to the office. At the time, we had an operations manager doing that, because that is, like you say, like you have to be in office. Like you can't be someone who's bouncing around.
And then the orders don't get placed.
Orders, or
right.
Exactly, or arrange for the deliveries and all of that jazz. So the project manager really just kept things rolling and helped to manage the trades. And organize and like scheduling, all that. And so that in the implementation phase, which is where they would sort of excel, because the designer could kind of like step back a little bit and focus on another design job, to your point, like focus on the things they do well.
Right.
Then it was, okay, the project manager would just have to check in with the designer to find out, was this the intention? Can you meet us on site because there's an issue? But they really owned it.
Yeah.
And I think if you need enough projects to be able to afford a team like that, for sure. It's not for anyone who's just starting out, I don't think, because it is nice to have 2 people on a project. I've had it the other way, where there's like one design lead and they're in charge of the design and managing it. And it's a lot for one person. It's fine if you have 1 project or 2 projects, but as soon as you start to get multiples, it's very hard to be, in the office, designing a fabric scheme, doing AutoCAD, and then zipping to site to meet the contract.
Yeah. I mean, it's just not going to work well for everyone. And I think exactly when you have enough projects, the goal was always, I want to do all the design and all the projects. Like I love that part. And I also love going to meetings on site. That's something I really enjoy, and working through details with different tradespeople. That's something I don't want to give up. And so if I'm out doing that all day, other people have to be in the office grabbing stuff, or that project designer. We're we kind of go through, some things are getting implemented while we're still designing other things.
Right.
And so she'd be like gathering all of this stuff so we can get that design together for the next space.
Yeah.
And I think it has worked. Also, it's nice to have the two if anything happens in life. Like we had a project manager that had some things happen and had to take some time off. And I was like, oh man, I don't know what is happening on this project.
And then I've had that too, where then the transfer of information, things slip through the cracks.
Oh,
You've missed something. I can't believe they didn't do this thing. And they're not there to defend themselves and explain what happened.
Right. It's true. It's very tricky. So if you have two and someone can't come, the other can kind of pick up a little more, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful it is a good combo and it has worked well. I did in the past, pre-pandemic, once I hired a senior designer to do more design, and that didn't feel like a great fit for me because I found that I was doing more managing and less design.
Right. Yeah. But you know what? I think this is a good conversation because it just goes to show to anyone who's listening, it is a lot of trial and error because we're all different and there isn't one formula that works for everyone.
I agree. Or like one formula that works for every firm or every project.
Yeah, true.
Like even within your firm, you might have to kind of adjust a little bit per project.
Yeah, like I have friends who they just want to have a bunch of junior designers assisting, and then they manage the design, and then their office person is technically project manager. Like to me, that I can't imagine that because like to be the most senior person and having to then you're really managing people.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found that the project manager element is so much work and takes a lot of time to do it well. And so I can't ask that person to also do design stuff or else something's got to give.
I think too, like if anyone who's listening is like, well, that sounds nice, ladies, because you have all these projects and you can afford to hire all these highly skilled people. You know, when you are starting out, you do wear many hats. And there are really great people. And for the longest time, I did have people wearing many hats. Mm-hmm. But you get to a point where you have to recognize that with the project load that you have, wearing many hats is no longer sustainable.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because you're no longer efficient with your time. Because like we said, what you have to do as a designer is very different than what you have to do as a project manager or placing orders and that type of thing. I think that when you start to hire obviously to the tasks you don't want to do, like you said, Katie, like you want to go to site, you want to troubleshoot with the trades, you want to be pulling together the design scheme. So you're not going to hire a senior designer, but you need help with administration, with keeping things organized, someone who has a design eye, because obviously you probably want to bounce ideas.
Exactly.
And it's so important to understand where you want to be. I've had designers tell me in our program, Inside Power of Process, wow, I had this aha that I actually don't want to do the design. I just want to do the selling. I was like, that is a first. I've never had someone say that. And I thought, good for you for recognizing that you love the consultations, you love selling.
Yeah.
But you don't want to execute and pick the fabrics and the paint color.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I thought, hey, you could hire designers to do that.
Definitely.
Right? Yeah.
And if you're client facing and doing the selling and you love that process, that's great.
Yeah. Whereas a lot of designers are like, I wish someone else could do that for me.
I don't feel like I ever realized I was in sales. I did. No, it took me a long time to realize that. And then I was like, oh, I sell stuff every day. But it's stuff that I just love. So it doesn't feel like I'm selling it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But I would say to designers just starting out, Lori and I always say that our first year together was our most profitable when it was just the two of us. Mm-hmm. And we're both wearing many hats and we worked super hard doing all of that. And it was very profitable. So just because you get bigger and hire more doesn't mean it doesn't mean that it's always more profitable. You're still finessing, refining, looking at where you make money, how much you pay people, all of those things.
Yeah. And if anything, it gets a lot more complicated because you have to look at all those things.
Right.
And I think sometimes everybody wants to grow and we get really busy. And this is the one challenge that I've always faced in my own firm is you want to take on more work, but you can't take on the work with the team that you have. So you need to bring on people because we are a service industry. It's not the same as scaling and selling a product.
Right.
And so, especially as you elevate to higher end clients, you need to deliver really great customer service, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as you grow, your overhead sometimes, there can be this funny, I don't know, I'm not a math person, but there's like this funny graph where the sales grow, but then in order to keep up with the sales, you need to grow your team. But there's sometimes a bit of a tipping point where you need to make substantially more money. Otherwise, the team, you still need the big team to service the 5 projects, but that team could service 10 projects, right? There's this there's this little bit of a tipping point where there's not a lot of profit unless you go really slowly and grow slow. It's constant juggle, I think, as you're trying to grow.
Yes. And I'd say it felt much more simple that first year. Totally. It was like 2 people, 1 big project, just do it.
Totally. But at some point, you sometimes, not everyone, I know lots of solos who are still doing it with just an assistant and they're super happy. Mm-hmm. But for some of us, we burn out and we realize, I just want to focus on certain tasks. I want to bring in help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I want to be more, I feel I wanted to work more 9 to 5, not work at home anymore as much. I don't work on the weekends at all. Because I just am with my kids, Amazing. So there's no way to do it.
Totally. Having kids does force you to do that.
Right. Yeah. So having help and an office and it's separate from my house has been so helpful to kind of set that in place.
Yes. Okay. Can I ask you a question? It just came up. I did an Instagram live with one of our community designer here in Ontario in Canada. And she was talking about that. We talked about boundaries and not working evenings and weekends and all the things. And then we started talking about email. Do you have a separate personal email or do you just use the one?
No, I have a separate.
I have to do that again.
And I have a one that I just order, if I online order, that's another email.
Oh, look at you. That's
great.
Clever. So you're not reminded of all the purchases you've made.
Right. Or then like you get all those marketing emails and it just all goes into this one kind
that
of
is so
email.
Smart. I've never heard of anyone doing that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. But I like having my professional and personal for sure.
Yeah. So that's so interesting because I used to have it. I had my Hotmail account from when I was 16.
Yes.
And then of course because I had that address for so long, it was so much spam that I just stopped using it. And I basically use my work email now for everything because it's the one I've always been tapped into. So I see things when they come in, but it's been recently brought to my attention that there is benefits to keeping it separate.
Right.
So I'm going to explore that.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. And most people on my team have access to my email for my professional email. And it's kind of nice that they're not seeing my kids' emails or, things about our personal life. It's not like we have a lot of secrets, but
I know. I know what you mean though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that work trip I said I was going on. Right. I'm actually going to Hawaii.
Right.
Yeah.
So I found it to be great. And I know if I don't want to look at work stuff, it's separate.
Yeah.
And I also have the Instagram I have a personal and a professional, which I really like having both of those.
Yeah.
And then on my professional one, I follow people that are, design related mostly.
Yeah.
And then on my personal, it's all people I know and friends.
Right.
So sometimes if I need some inspiration, I'm just going deep on the professional one. And then if I just want to see my friends' kids, I just switch over.
Right. And that way too is probably private, I would imagine, your personal one. Yeah. Yeah. That's smart. Smart. Yeah. All the things. Okay. We can talk all day long. Great. Oh my gosh.
It has been fun.
So, okay. Our time is coming to an end. Before we wrap up today, I always like to ask my guest if they have one last nugget of wisdom to share with the listeners.
I think one thing I would say is I really find it important to surround yourself with people that you trust and trust you, and we're all supportive of each other, and that even though there's one person's name on the door, it's really a team. And they support me professionally. They, support me in so many ways, and I hope I do the same for them. And I think it just creates a positive work environment.
Oh, I love that. That's so wonderful. It's so true. It's not just like when you're looking to bring on team members, it's not just hired help, right?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. You spend a lot of time together.
Definitely. And everyone has different things happening in their life. So it's nice to have this place where you feel supported professionally and personally.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. And it's sunny there all the time. So everyone's always happy.
Not today. Maybe tomorrow.
Oh, gosh. Give us some of that sun. It's cloudy, cloudy, cloudy.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you so much, Katie, for coming on the podcast and having this conversation. I'm sure that everyone is going to love this episode. Can you please remind or share, I haven't shared it yet, share with the audience where they can find you?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And our website is katieraffetto.com, and our Instagram is KR Interior Design.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
That was smart. Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie.
Of course. Well, thank you. It's been a real joy.
Well, there you have it. That was really, really wonderful. Thank you, Katie, for being my guest. I hope for those of you listening, you understand, or you got a good takeaway that it's a constantly evolving thing, running a business. I hate using the word thing. It just sounds so uneducated. I'm going to try not to use that word. But it really is. Running a business is constantly evolving, and we are always tweaking and changing and learning from our mistakes. There is not one size fits all when it comes to running a design business. And I feel very strongly about this. I think there are certain things that we all need to be doing so that we can make money and feel organized and feel empowered to run our business. But how you structure your team, how you handle your billing, it can vary. And that's why I love these conversations. I love how Katie shares that she moved from the individual line item billing to the paragraph. Oh, love it, love it, love it. I definitely would recommend trying this if you are struggling like Katie was and like I used to be with those individual line items. Let me know how you enjoyed this podcast. Come join us inside the Designer Meetup Facebook group. Of course, I'm always there answering questions. There's always great conversation and sharing happening. But also send me a DM on Instagram. I live there basically, so I'm always there. Happy to help. And I just love it when you guys share the podcast. So please take a screenshot, share it on your social, share it with your friends, let people know that we've got this thing going on over here in our corner of the intraweb. And that's all. Have a really great day. I'll see you soon.